Going behind the scenes of anything is always exciting, right? There's always that allure of what's happening on the other side of the camera.
You've explored filming locations, it sounds like all over the world.
I was so often traveling to do interviews on the sets.
Game of Thrones,
Emily in Paris.
Bridgerton.
I am also a big Potterhead, a Harry Potter fan.
Yes.
For so many of us, our first exposure to places outside of where we grew up was through television, was through film. I grew up watching reruns of The Brady Bunch. They made their vacation episodes feel special, like Grand Canyon and Hawaii were both multi-part episodes. So it felt special to me that a family was traveling with something I could relate to.
When you love a show, a TV show or a movie or even a book, the destinations come alive. You're putting yourself kind of mentally there in Winterfell or in Bridgerton.
Seeing these things in pop culture kind of informs what makes it relevant to you. I think it's just also fantasy. It's that fantasy of this is a place that was such a big deal when I saw it on screen. And here I am standing in this exact place, immersed in this exact place like it was on film.
What upcoming or lesser known filming locations do you think that travelers should be keeping an eye on right now?
I mean, I'm so excited about
Rachel Chang, thank you so much for being here on the podcast. I'm excited about this topic because it informs so much of how I travel, where I choose to travel. I don't know that I did that on purpose, but when you love a show, a TV show or a movie or even a book, the destinations come alive, right?
Exactly. I feel like sometimes you don't even realize that you're planning your trips around places that you've read about or heard about. But for so many of us, our first exposure to places outside of where we grew up was through television, was through film. There was a world that seemed like a fantasy. Even if the fantasy was another urban environment, it was something different than what we know. So I think that's kind of what's sparking this interest right now in visiting film locations.
Well, that's a good point and something to think about because the folks who are doing this kind of travel now, this film location, movie location, destination travel, they grew up, and they're some of the first people to grow up with TV, movies, series that are representing destinations that are almost as much a character in the story as some of the characters are. So it's like generations of people who have this new reason to travel.
And I think that with social media, it's kind of heightened because of that. I think we all did it. I mean, I think this was one of the first trips I took on my own with my friends was to go to Salzburg because we wanted to see the Sound of Music sites. So that's from 1956. I hope I have that right. So I feel like that whole sense of wanting to go twirl in the hills like Julie Andrews did. I mean, I grew up watching reruns of The Brady Bunch, and I feel like that also, they made their vacation episodes feel special, like Grand Canyon and Hawaii were both multi-part episodes. So it's like they made it special, so it felt special to me that a family was traveling with something I could relate to. So I remember going to Hawaii and being worried I'd run into that little, I can't remember what was called, that little tiki thing that they had that was cursed. Or going to the Grand Canyon. When I first went to Grand Canyon, I was like, oh, that's where Alice rode the mule down into the canyon. I feel like seeing these things in pop culture kind of informs what makes it relevant to you.
I totally agree. So would you say that that is what got you into sort of your career as a travel writer and travel lover?
If I really go back, I had a kind of a tale of a sliding doors moment, if you will, where I was wondering if I should go first to travel or to entertainment because I knew I loved both. And I kind of thought I should write about travel when I've traveled more. So for the first, let's say, 2 decades of my career, I really was focused on entertainment. But I didn't realize how baked into entertainment I would be traveling. I was so often traveling to do interviews on the sets of, at the time, I was a teen magazine editor, so I was going to a lot of Disney Channel and Nickelodeon show sets. And at the time, Canada was a kind of a big filming location. So I was going up to Vancouver, to Toronto a lot. But I also, Salt Lake City, I was in this nondescript high school just waiting for them to film some scene with basketballs. Turns out it's High School Musicals, get your head in the game, and we got bored and we're just sitting outside. So like a lot of these early places I traveled for work have become iconic places. People go outside and pose in front of East High now. And I also, one of my first big trips was I went to Barcelona for Cheetah Girls 2. And that was actually kind of a transformative moment in my career because I remember this moment where I was sitting on the set, and I don't even remember who exactly it was, but there was like one of the parents of one of the girls from the Cheetah Girls cast, a producer, maybe a production assistant on set. And we were just all talking about the market in Barcelona and how it didn't matter who you were on the set and how everybody has their job and there's a hierarchy on the set. We were also taken by this joy of traveling and being in this other city and discovering the same market in our own ways. And I think that's what makes it so exciting. I think that is kind of what brings these two worlds together.
This filming location travel bridges the gap between sort of entertainment, travel just for the sake of travel.
Going behind the scenes of anything's always exciting, right? There's always that allure of what's happening on the other side of the camera. So I feel like it gives you that sense of I was there and I know what it was like, what the camera didn't see. So I think that's kind of one big pillar of it. Another is just the simple fact that you're standing where your favorite stars stood. And that's just exciting, right? Like, oh my God, maybe this is just a patch of grass, but this is where Bella and Edward fell in love, right? Like in Twilight, it could be anything. But it's just like, it gives a place that is so nondescript such relevance. And then I think it's just also fantasy. It's that fantasy of this is a place that was such a big deal when I saw it on screen. And here I am standing in this exact place, immersed in this exact place like it was on film. And I think all tied together, it's a bridge, but it's also almost a juxtaposition because you're there, but it's not what it was then. So there's also that line that needs to be towed.
You've explored filming locations, it sounds like all over the world. What are some of the top countries or cities that are like must-visit destinations for movie and TV fans?
I think Croatia, Greenland is really booming this year as a destination. Iceland, these places that look otherworldly. I don't know. I go to places and I go, this place would be a great place for a music video. And I think what I mean by that is it's so cinematic and it's so not what I see in my general day-to-day life that it belongs on film. And I think naturally, Dubrovnik in Croatia, just that city is so different from where I shouldn't generalize, but where most of us live. It's a very different environment. And it just looks like it's been there for centuries. The fact that it looks like it's a piece of, it was built for a period piece, even though it literally is the opposite of that.
Right.
It's like, it's
a real place.
It's a real place we're giving new relevance. So we're bringing fiction in to make a very historic, very nonfiction place, give it new relevance. It's like another phase of history. Now it's also in pop culture. We're giving it more meaning. Iceland has Game of Thrones. I believe like Walter Mitty was also a great movie that I feel like it was very underrated for just destinations and visuals. Was such a wonderful, and I think that was filmed in Iceland. I also sometimes end up doing the opposite where I go somewhere first and find that something was filmed there. And for me, one of the places that really struck me was when I went to Morocco, Ait Ben Haddou in Morocco, which is kind of between the Sahara and Marrakesh, was a village that was built there also centuries ago. I mean, it is all earthen houses. It's a historic place, but it was in Gladiator, it was in Game of Thrones. It just was so fascinating walking through all those little passages. And it was so cinematic. And any picture you take there looks like it's ready for, like it looks like you were on the film set. Yeah, it doesn't even matter. It was just the natural way that it is. That all said, not every place looks like what we saw on film.
That is what I wanted to ask you next. Is there a spot, a film location that surprised you compared to how it looks on screen?
I don't want to say I was disappointed by this place because it is one of my favorite places on earth, but I love Notting Hill, the movie.
Okay.
And Notting Hill is also one of my favorite destinations in London because of the movie. But the little blue door it's just a blue door. Like, I don't know what I was expecting. I think I wanted Hugh Grant to be there. I wanted him to invite me in.
Yes.
But I think it even had a sign on it that it was a tech office or something like very not a travel bookshop owner's home. And so I think it was a little jarring. And I actually go there every time I go to London. That's how much I love Notting Hill. I have to see my blue door every visit. But on my most recent visit, I got there and I thought, oh, the door is gone because nobody was looking at it. And I was like, did I get the wrong address? Blah, blah, blah. As I'm standing there looking at my phone, double checking the address, somebody else comes up and takes a picture. So I'm like, oh, this is it. I just caught it at this moment where it was just being a door because it is just a door.
Yeah.
So I think it's just managing expectations. I don't know what I expected a door to be. Was it there be a spotlight on it? Was there? I don't know what I wanted, but it was just like, okay, this is what it is.
It is a door.
It is a door.
Yeah. I think sometimes we go to places and we're like, oh, okay. Well, and especially maybe with fantasy, right? So you go to Northern Ireland.
Right.
And you're in the dark hedges, and it's stunning. It's fabulous on its own without any kind of Game of Thrones connection. But you're there, and you're like, all right, it would be cooler if there were there was an army marching by, and their cool clothes, and there was a dragon, and you know, you can put yourself into it and see why they chose it. But also, when it comes to fantasy, you're just not going to get that whole experience, right?
Exactly.
Sometimes it's just a door. Sometimes it's just a tree.
Yes.
And that's all you get.
And that's the beauty of filmmaking. One of my very first internships, I was interning at Nickelodeon back in the late 90s, and I worked with the Film Scout for a little period. And I remember just seeing this whole strip of Polaroids of a street. And it wasn't until I saw just all the streets in a row that I realized what their job is like to really match the script to the location and then dress it up. So we're going there completely undressed up. It's just a street, and it looks like any other street at a glance. But their job is to turn it into this magical thing we absorb on film.
You really have to imagine what it could look like and think about the budget and how much it's going to cost to turn it into a Regency neighborhood from 200 years ago.
Right. It's almost like the bigger the budget, probably the less dramatic it will look. I recently went just south of Atlanta, which is actually one of my. I'm a little obsessed with Trilith.
I love Trilith.
I don't
Trilith
think people
is amazing.
talk about Trilith enough.
Trilith is underrated.
It's so underrated.
Yes.
It's basically Trilith is a bunch of Marvel movies have been filming there, and they built this brand new studio.
Gorgeous.
It's gigantic. Yeah. Everything is shiny new. But then they built a town around it, which is so brilliant.
It's walkable. It has everything you could want, a little independent bookstore.
What's so fascinating about the neighborhood is no two homes in that neighborhood are the same so that they can film there. So you're walking through and there's a tree house here. And then suddenly this one looks like you're in Greece. And then the next one looks like you're in Florence. It's so fascinating that they built a place around it. And they just recently, I believe a year and a half ago, launched the Trilith Experience. So they take you through a tour and they take you into one of the sound stages. And the sound stage that they took us into on my tour was the Suicide Squad had filmed there. So on the side of the walls, everyone has signed it. So it was fun to see kind of where they had been, because it's more than just a place they were. They've lived there for so long, and they have this hotel there. It's really a lovely place to get a behind the scenes look at the filmmaking industry.
I want to talk about what your favorite filming location is that you've ever visited. And that's probably a hard question, and I'm so sorry for the pressure, but you have to tell me the favorite one.
I'll tell you the most magical one, and I don't mean to repeat something I've already talked about, but it probably is because I watched Sound of Music so much growing up. Going to Salzburg was so magical. And I did all the things they offered us, right? There was the tour that took us out to Mondesi to go to the Abbey, and also, walked us to the park to see the exact places that the scenes were shot. But then afterwards, I was just walking down a tiny alley, and I knew I was trying to find the Abbey from the movie. And as I got closer, I started hearing music in the air, and I was like, come on. Doesn't sound of music just because you're in Salzburg. But sure enough, the nuns were singing. And so I started going towards it. I was like, they're not going to let us in there. And actually, they were behind a wall, so I couldn't see them. And they do normally sing at certain times, like before sunrise. And it was hard to get to times. And they just randomly were practicing. And I happened to follow the Sound of Music where the Sound of Music filmed. So that was a very magical experience that started from this fantasy of the movie, but then kind of went into this real life local experience where this is what happens here day to day. And the film might have led me here, but I caught this slice that I wouldn't have otherwise if I hadn't had the allure of, I probably wouldn't go looking for an Abbey anywhere else in the world but Salzburg, Austria.
Right.
So I think that was a very special, just a very unique experience to have seen that.
What's one that you haven't visited, but that is at the top of your list?
I am also a big Potterhead, a Harry Potter fan.
Yes.
And I think Harry Potter makes it very easy to see their locations. I mean, the actual studios is now Warner Brothers Studios Tour London, I believe is the official name, the making of Harry Potter. And the fact that they turned their actual locations that they made home for 10 years into a place where we can all go every day. They've done such a wonderful job, not just making that an experience. There's a wonderful reveal when you go into the Great Hall. It's almost one part museum, but then the back you see parts of the streets or Forward Privet Drive. So it's really, it's an easy way to go to a filming location.
Yeah.
But, and then actually in Hollywood, they also have Warner Brothers Studio Tour Hollywood, and they have some of the sets there. And Harry Potter, I feel like it's just everywhere. I've been everywhere from Taipei to Paris, and I've run into pop-up platform 3 and 9 3/4, just set up all over. So I feel like that's so big that it's just everywhere. But the one place that I really want to go is the Glenfinnan Viaduct. I believe it's from Chamber of Secrets when they're flying the car over the beautiful viaduct of the bridge where the train's riding, where the Hogwarts Express is riding to campus. And it doesn't look real. The height of the bridge and set in the Scottish Highlands, it just looks so fantastical. It is one of those places they say you're not supposed to meet your heroes. I don't know if I really want to go because you'd be riding on the train and you wouldn't see it that way. Even if you saw it from below, you would never get the perspective just right unless you were...
Like the perfect camera angle.
Exactly. Unless you're in a flying car, you can't really...
Listen, we don't have that now, but soon. You never know.
We're getting there.
We could be flying our cars over the viaduct.
Exactly.
Anytime. Harry Potter is an excellent one because there are a ton of places to experience, like you said, the sets in, I think it's Leavesden, outside of London. You can take a bus, very easy to get to, and so many good photo opportunities. It really does feel magical. Like you said, there's surprises, and if you've watched the movies or grown up with them, then it does feel wonderful. Now, there are no roller coasters. Let's talk about tips you have for somebody planning to visit filming locations. What should people be looking for when they're mapping out these kind of trips?
I think it depends on how deeply you want to get. Like, do you really want to go stand in that exact place and recreate the scene and feel like you're a part of it? Or are you just using the movie as inspiration for your vacation? So it kind of depends on your own approach. So if you're using, Croatia, as soon as you get there, you're going to feel like you're in Game of Thrones, right? Into Dubrovnik, you walk along those walls and you look down into the old city. It feels like it's a piece of it, even if it's not the exact corner. But it also depends, like something like Emily in Paris, where Paris has become such a character.
Yeah.
But it's all and everywhere in Paris, right? The Pont Neuf is part of it. There, everything from the Eiffel Tower down to Sacré-Cœur is part of Emily in Paris. The last time I was there, I was like, I have to go see where the Savoir offices are. And so it turns out it's just like a little courtyard very close to, my French is so terrible, but Le Jardin du Palais, the Royal Palace.
There you go. I got you.
Royal Palace Gardens.
Yep.
And Les Halles, which I hope I'm saying better. I was taught to say Les Halles.
Yep, that's right. But you got it.
It's just a tiny little courtyard. So it looks like a French office.
Yeah.
Again, just a door. It's
so much more sparkly. When you're watching it on TV and there's soundtrack music and somebody in a very beautiful outfit frolicking by or going through the door.
But Paris is Paris.
Paris is Paris.
Yes.
Like Paris was Paris before Emily got there.
Exactly.
And always will be. So what tools should people use when mapping a trip? And do you recommend like guided tours for filming locations or independently? Is that better?
I think if you really want to find all the exact locations, there's specialty tours. Just because I did spend so much time in Atlanta recently, I know there's a company called Detours, the letter D, and they do private tours. They do a Stranger Things tour. They do Marvel Cinematic Universe tours.
Walking Dead,
even Gone with the Wind. So they really specialize in everything that's filmed down there, and so then they're taking you exactly to where you need to be. Whereas on the other side of it, during my entertainment magazine days, Twilight was huge. And so I was in Vancouver and I actually went looking for a lot of these filming locations that just on my own. And that was a mixed bag. Some places are a park and it's just a county park. But I remember one thing I went looking for was Bella's red truck. And we knew where it was, or I don't know how we knew at the time, because it was still, the internet was the internet, but it wasn't the way it is today. But I had the address. So I pull up, middle of nowhere. It's just a house in the middle of nowhere. And I just felt like such a creep. Like I'm sitting there trying to take a picture out of the corner of my rental car. And we have to remember these are people's homes too. Somebody owns it. They could have been in there and I just didn't see. So I think sometimes you have to also realize filming locations are real life. And the best recent example of that is that Sex and the City, Carrie Bradshaw's home right here in the West Village. The woman put up a gate because
she's probably had enough of people having their moment.
Totally get it.
So I have a story about a time that I took pictures in front of someone's house. And my siblings and I went on a road trip and we ended up in Preston, Idaho. So very rural, very in the middle of nowhere. And it's where they filmed Napoleon Dynamite.
Oh my gosh.
And so we had costumes. I was Deb, my brother was Napoleon, and my sister was Pedro. And mustache and all.
Oh my gosh.
And we went to the filming locations. And because it's so hard to get to, it's not like they're getting a ton of people making pilgrimages to Preston, Idaho for Napoleon. And so we went up and knocked on the door and we were like, do you mind if we recreate a photo? And they were like, you guys are so weird, but go for it. Because, fully dressed in costume. And they were like, okay. And they were cool with it. But obviously, they're not getting a ton of traffic. They're not getting as much as the poor Carrie Bradshaw folks or, you think about the Friends, Monica's apartment. There's somebody on the corner all the time looking at Monica's apartment. So, that is a very good point. And to be respectful of these real world locations. Do you have any tips for navigating the sites off the beaten path or difficult to access? Like, what should people know before they book a trip to somewhere and then are trying to find the viaduct or Winterfell or whatever it may be?
I mean, I do think that's where it is probably better to go with a tour because you are kind of going through this neighborhood and it wasn't used to being welcoming visitors. So it's not going to be easy and you are going to have to navigate privacy. You want to be respectful. If you go with a tour, they're going to be like, okay, we're going here. Here's the spot. Stand here. This is exactly how it was framed. And I think it just makes it more respectful on both ends. A lot of these places aren't built for hordes of tourists to come into. And it has been a problem in certain places. So I think that maybe if you are going way off the beaten path, that is maybe where you lean on a more official tour or really do your homework. And one of my favorite accounts on Instagram to follow is Stepping Through Film, where he's so brilliant. I think the guy's name is Thomas Duke, and he takes pictures of the actual scene and he places it right in front of where the location is. And I think it makes it so easy to really envision. Like I remember he had a One Direction music video shot. It was just lined up so perfectly. There's the pop culture moment.
That's how it works. You can see them superimposed with each other. I was going to point out one place that has kind of suffered from the tourism is the Dark Hedges in Northern Ireland. So many people were coming there and driving down this historic old road with these historic old trees that it was starting to bother the roots of the trees. And so now they have cut off access to that road. You can still go there, but you cannot drive through. And so that's an example of, people got so excited about it and so many people came, and it's great because all the hotels nearby, they get so much business and the breweries and all there's a trickle down there of tourism, but you also want the trees to last.
Exactly. And kind of in the same vein, Dubrovnik almost lost its UNESCO status because so many people were descending upon it after all the filming there. So it is like over tourism is a big problem. Like I just hope it never crosses over. Like Venice, I feel like it's the epicenter of over tourism. I just feel like they can't film anything there. I can't take it anymore. I think we have to be really mindful, not just about spreading out where people go, but if it ends up being a pop culture phenomenon, that place has to be able to support the tourism. Maybe we do want to spread out tourism, but we also don't want to put it where it can't handle it.
Yeah.
So it's a balance. And I think as travelers, we do have a little responsibility to make sure that if we are going somewhere that's very popular, if we do want to go to Northern Ireland or whatnot, to go maybe off season or to find a moment where we're able to get their experience, what we want to experience, but also help the economy.
That makes so much sense. So with shows like The White Lotus bringing attention to sexy destinations, what upcoming or lesser known filming locations do you think that travelers should be keeping an eye on right now?
I mean, I'm so excited about White Lotus. It's not my genre, but I was just like absolutely swept away by the first season. It's like, ooh, like it made resort living so sexy, right? Like I'm not in general a resort person, and it made me want to go on a resort vacation. I also think it's brilliant how they've formed this partnership with Four Seasons so that even if it's not one of these three resorts you're actually going to, you're still like, oh, I'm at a resort that a White Lotus was at. So I feel like that's almost a way to guess where the next White Lotus will be, because it's like, okay, we know it.
There's only these
fabulous,
ones. Right.
Yeah, it's going to be at a fabulous destination that there's a fabulous Four Seasons at, and we've got the Maui, the Sicily, and the Thailand. So now what? We're also hopping continents, right?
Where haven't we hit? Because we've had what? Hawaii,
We've had
Sicily,
North America, Europe, and Asia.
Thailand.
So we can start deducing where I feel like it's South America's turn or Africa. Either would be easy. So I feel like
I will fall down that rabbit hole with you gladly and try to figure those clues out.
It's like an escape room. We got to use the clues we have and figure out the destination, right?